I'm sure you've heard the old saying, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Well, that summarizes your position with private flood insurance. Right now, if a borrower asks if you'll accept a private flood policy, acceptance is optional. But starting Monday, July 1st, acceptance of private flood insurance is mandatory. If you refuse to accept a private flood policy that contains coverage comparable to a FEMA policy, you're in violation and subject to penalties of $2,000 per violation. On the other hand, if you accept a private policy and it does not provide coverage comparable to a FEMA policy, you've violated the section of the reg that defines the minimum standards for private flood insurance. By accepting a private policy, you are warranting that the policy is comparable to a FEMA policy. In the event of a flood, if the private policy does not pay, in a situation where a FEMA policy would pay, your institution has huge potential liability. To determine if a private policy and a FEMA policy are comparable, the policies must be reviewed side by side. If the private policy contains a compliance aid statement, then the policy may be accepted without conducting that side-by-side review. Some lenders have decided they are not going to accept a private policy if it lacks the compliance aid statement. That is not an option. If the policy lacks the compliance aid statement, then the side-by-side review is mandatory. By July 1st, you must have a full compliance management program for mandatory acceptance of flood insurance in place. Examiners expect to see, of course, policies, procedures, training. To help, we've developed the Premium Private Flood Insurance Compliance Management System. The system includes basically everything you're going to need. You get a 2-hour recorded webinar that explains all aspects of the new final rule. That webinar is accompanied with a 62-page manual that walks you through the webinar, but it also is very suitable for you to use for your own in-house training. You also get a PowerPoint deck, so you get the slides that are used in the webinar, and again, they're suitable to use in your in-house training. We also provide you with a Director Senior Management Update that explains the basic requirements of the rules. You can use that to give that information to your director and senior management to get them up to speed with what's going on here. You also receive a policy update and a procedure update. Your existing flood insurance policy needs to be updated to include the private flood insurance rules, and your procedures, of course, have to be complete. They have to include step-by-step instructions on how to comply with these new requirements. You also get a private flood insurance options flowchart. It kind of walks your staff step by step through the options for determining if the private policy provides coverage comparable to FEMA policy. So when you're doing the review, it's step-by-step instructions for doing that. Also, you receive a private flood insurance comparability checklist. Again, as you're doing a review to determine if the private policy and the FEMA policy are comparable, the checklist gives you the elements that should be in place. Okay, the checklist not only kind of walks you through the process, but it also serves as documentation in your loan file showing that you did an appropriate review. The entire premium package, which regularly costs $435, is available for $300 until 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on June 28th, 2019. The premium package is available in the shop on the Compliance Resource website. See the link below. Thank you.